Hello, greetings, and welcome to another Get to Know the Candidate. It's exciting to be here today with Dr. Daniel Lee, who is going to be sharing with us his candidacy for Congress. So, definitely a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about. So, get cozy, get ready. I want to also just acknowledge that a lot of you watch my live streams and share your questions, and they're very welcome. But just know that I'm gonna do my best to try to answer your questions, but not all your questions are gonna be able to get answered today. But that's we get these forums going so that you can also get relationships with your with the candidates, and you can ask questions yourself. So I'm waiting for Daniel to join us on Instagram. And if you are watching on Facebook and on YouTube, on Twitch. Let's see, Twitter is also in the house. Welcome. And I will see you, your comments and your questions. And of course, all of the commentary is ready. So I hope you can also share in the screen on the comments, wherever you're tuning in from. Where are you tuning in from? And what are some of the things that you want to know? So let's see. Let me find Daniel. I don't see him here yet. There he is. All right, let me get him in here. And here we go.
Hey.
Hello, hello. I think I'm still waiting for you to join us on Instagram, but it's great to have you here. How are you? There it is.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. And I cannot see you on Instagram. Yeah, I think I see your, you got to turn your camera around. Bear with us, guys. Bear with us.
There I am.
There you go. This is what I was trying to avoid. Remember, I was telling you, but it's cool. It's cool. Yeah. So now there we go. So welcome. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today and another Get to Know the Candidate. Um, First, I want to just start by just having a conversation about who you are, and if you can introduce yourself to to my community here on social media.
Sure. So, my name's Dr. Daniel Lee, currently mayor of Culver City. I was elected in 2018 as the first Black council member in Culver City's history, but also pretty importantly, the first renter in Culver City's history to be on the council. And of course, while I was here, and I'm done in November. We passed rent control. We voted to close down the Inglewood oil field. We passed a property transfer tax. We moved forward with mobile crisis response for mental health and physical health instead of police officers. We're talking about an affordable housing overlay, raising the minimum wage, and technically we passed reparations last year. So we're working on making it clear what that looks like in Culver City. Um, on the federal level, when I found out that Karen Bass was running for mayor, I immediately thought, well, who's going to slide into that position? And, you know, this is more of an open race. So it's probably a good time for a lot of people who are motivated to jump in just to see, because a lot of positions, you know, one incumbent moves from one space to another. Um, this is a bit more open, and I'm really motivated by the climate crisis. We've been able to do some good work here in Culver City. LA City's been able to do some good work in California. But if the entire country doesn't move to address the climate crisis, then our work won't really mean much. And is is disgusting as Congress is at the moment, I think we need more champions for the Green New Deal, but we need to go beyond the Green New Deal to really address the climate in the way it should be addressed and should have been addressed 20, 30 years ago when we, originally learned the science.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also know about you that you are a veteran and that you are have been very involved in filmmaking, and also that you work in a lot of the social justice kind of realm. So it's great to see your leadership in the city council and now as a mayor in Culver City. But I wonder if you can maybe share with us a little bit more insight about who you are and like what brought you to like actually be in politics.
Yeah, sure. So I actually moved out to the Los Angeles area for college. I was born in Alabama, grew up in Florida, and for most of my time here, I've been trying to work in entertainment. I was in the Screen Actors Guild for about 12 years. The first time I went to graduate school, it was for script writing. My undergrad is in cinema television from USC, and I have a lot of friends who work in film, either as writers, directors, crew folk. That was really my focus. But in the course of getting my degree, I I assumed a lot of debt from USC. Private
Mhm.
school, they give a lot of grants, but they don't quite cover everything.
Mm.
So a lot of times people ask me why I joined the military, and I joined in February of 2002. And most people are like, "Oh, did you join after 9/11?" I was like, "No, no, I joined to get help paying off my student loans."
Mhm.
Um, and it's a shame that that is the reason most people join the military. It's an
Right.
economic draft. Sometimes it's not student loans. Other times it's because there's no opportunity in the city where they are, and or they want to go to college, but they know they can't afford to pay for it. But in the military, my job was SATCOM, wideband telemetry, and space systems. So long, complicated way to say a whole lot of different communication stuff: satellite bands, satellite phones, uh, point-to-point, tropospheric scatter, a whole lot of communication stuff. But I also taught first aid and CPR, and I eventually started teaching everybody in my shop how to use the equipment. Um, my master's and doctorate are in social work,
Yeah.
and I really got into caring anything about politics more than voting through activism and organizing. And I, had started to wet my feet a little bit prior to Occupy. Then Occupy came along, and that was a sort of nexus to meet a whole lot of people across LA County. Even if they weren't there consistently, a lot of people were there in the first couple weeks at LA City Hall, and that sort of busted open my brain. I've been working with Move to Amend to get a resolution through LA City Council for about 6 to 8 months. Then
Mhm.
Occupy happened, and a lot of Occupy folks helped us get our resolution through LA City Council December 6th, 2011. And we were the first large city to call for an amendment to the Constitution saying corporations are not people and money is not free speech. Um,
Woo! Okay, everybody, I want to see the hearts in the comments. Yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry. Keep going. I just got excited about that.
but I mean that's really where you know I usually look for the deeper start of a problem, and that's where it really became clear to me that the problem isn't this senator, that senator, this congressman. It's really systemic, and
Mhm.
corporations have too much power in our system, and that's something that we need to address. Public financing of elections would be good, but to have them actually be required, we need to get rid of Citizens
So
United. We need a
united.
constitutional amendment. But from Occupy on, I hooked up with a lot of different groups, and I found myself working over 40 hours a week for no money, while I was also working 40 hours a week in my normal jobs. So that's when I decided to get my MSW, and I got that at UCLA. Shortly after that, I actually ran for office here in Culver City and lost. But my motivation there was someone told me that there had never been an African American elected, and I was like, well, let's change that. Uh,
Wow.
but I ran in 2018, of course, and I won. And
Yeah.
shortly after that, I started my doctorate and received my doctorate last June.
Wow, that's incredible. Congratulations. And I am there with you in terms of the money in politics, the influence of special interests in politics is really problematic, and it's not just a student debt, it's our housing crisis, it's our health care, system, the way it is, the way that we treat our unhoused community, not just in Los Angeles, but everywhere. You know, how we don't see the connection between mind, body, and spirit, in my opinion, is also very troubling. So I am just so excited to hear that you are also a social worker, because that's much on the, not only on their, training, but it's much on the values that, that you bring to the table. So with all this experience, if you can share with us, then, like, why running for office? It's so crazy out there. Someone that has run for office myself, and also didn't get to where I wanted to be, but felt that I made a huge impact, in the political world here in Los Angeles. Why you want to run for office?
Well, I think the real motivator for me is to try to get a different type of person into elected office. I think most of the people that we see running for office at almost every level are really, really in love with themselves.
Mm,
And they're not really there for the people. They're there
mm,
because they've always wanted to be an elected official, and that's that. And my motivation comes from, some real fear and anxiety about the climate, but not just the climate. Income inequality here in the United States is as bad as it's ever been. And a lot of people are propped up by debt. They're propped up by student loan debt, credit card debt, and personal loan debt. So it doesn't seem as if any income inequality is as bad as it is, but people are surviving in LA County and in the 37th district in particular on $30,000 a year, on $20,000 a year.
wow.
And, you know, people are only going to take so much. And if we really want to prevent something a bit more extreme from happening, we need to start paying people. We need to really talk about a living wage and not a minimum wage. And it's really my concerns for a lot of the people that I know across the country, and just for the country in general, with the climate crisis and income equality, like they're going to feed into each other. The
Mhm.
refugees that come to our borders now are just going to increase as the climate crisis increases. And that's going to start a whole wave of xenophobia and targeting. And we're just marching closer and closer to, a totalitarian or fascist form of government. And if we
Mhm.
don't actively push back and actively talk about it and actively make substantive changes to make our society more equal, that's just where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you're mentioning, the economic reality of folks in your district. I hear now almost daily how much more expensive has become to live in Los Angeles, where LA, even though it's the second largest city in the country, was a place for the arts. We have Hollywood here, creatives move here, and now it's unbearable. People can afford to live here, and there's a clear correlation between that and our in-house, current crisis. um, so you also talked about a few things in your district. If you can just tell us, for folks that are maybe listening that might not be from LA, or maybe don't know that you're running in their own district, tell us a little bit about where is the district, what is it like, and paint us a picture of what your district is.
Sure. So the district is actually a bit of a microcosm of the state and the country. Some of the poorest people in the country live in the district, and some of the richest people in the country live in the district as well. It includes Culver City, a little part of Westchester, a little part of Cheviot Hills, the more affluent areas. It includes a whole lot of mid city, practically all of mid city. Um, it includes Little Ethiopia,
Mm-hmm.
a little part of downtown. USC is in the district. It includes a significant portion of South Central, South Los Angeles, but it doesn't go into Inglewood.
Right.
And with the new boundaries after redistricting, it includes a little bit of East LA that used to be in Roy Ball's district. So it's a wide ranging district. It's basically the center of Los Angeles, and it incorporates very many different ethnicities. It's the one of the only quote unquote Black districts, but it's primarily Latino. Um,
Yeah.
and they're about 30% white and about 10 to 12% Asian as well, and 25% Black folks. So it's a pretty diverse district and very representative of Los Angeles and California in general. But it has places where there are a lot of jobs coming in, like Culver City. But then it has places where the jobs have left and never come back, in
Mhm.
parts of South LA. And there are places that are rapidly gentrifying, like Culver City has a few times, like West Adams. And, I think the biggest struggle generally, because you don't mind seeing a place that has been disinvested in get invested in. But when that investment makes the people who live there and the small businesses that live there move away, that's not right. There are ways to do that. And from my point of view, what we really need to do to address the housing crisis at the lowest level is to have the government get back into building housing directly. But it needs to be done differently. We don't need to build projects.
Absolutely.
We need to build high quality, nice housing for low income people. And some of that can be social housing, some of it can be mixed income, but it doesn't necessarily need to be mixed income if the government funds it. It can be high quality housing for low income people. I always like to say, poor people deserve nice things too. You don't. It's not like you make less money, so you never get to have any ice cream. It's crazy that people criticize what, for instance, working class people who qualify for assistance use food stamps on. It's like that's none of your business.
Mhm.
None of your business at all. Um, and if people want to get something that they enjoy with some of the money that they get from our government, uh, that's their right.
Why not? Yeah, absolutely. And I see some comments, really great comments here about what you're saying, and I want to invite everyone that is watching. If you're on Facebook, on Twitter, and Twitch, you can write your thoughts in the comments and your questions in the comments. Some folks are asking if Ball Heights is also in your district.
Boyle Heights is not. Boyle Heights, I believe that is
Jimmy
CD
Gomez, I think.
34. Yeah, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
34.
I think it's Jimmy Gomez. Awesome. Okay, so if you are watching and if you are in the area of the California Congressional 37th District, please go ahead and forward this video to your friends so that they can see the amazing work that Daniel has been doing and his vision, for our district, and not just for our district, for our world, because I believe that when one of us thrives, we all thrive. And I believe that you also have a kind of that attitude. So what are your plans for the district? What are your main, your main policies or your platform that you're running on? Like, if I know you told us earlier about the environment, and I can see a lot of people are excited about that. But what's your vision for the district?
So my policy platform overall focuses on aggressively addressing climate change, um, codifying a woman or person's right to choose in law,
Mm-hmm.
and passing comprehensive immigration reform that includes a guest worker program, because a lot of people are actually crossing the border to make more money,
Yeah.
but they actually want to go back home and spend that money with their family. They're
Mm-hmm.
just afraid that they'll never be able to come back if they cross, frequently. Um, but also, I believe, particularly in our district, and the 37th and the 34th were hit really hard by COVID.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons that I'm really motivated around um, bringing Medicare for all or some form of single payer healthcare to the district. Because when you talk about essential workers, the way that they've been characterized as grocery store workers, retail workers, people who work in hospitals, that's a significant proportion of the people who work in the 37th district. That's a significant proportion of SEIU, UHW workers, and SEIU workers, and Unite Here Local 11, and other folks that work in grocery stores, and that's a big priority. Um, the disproportionate health impacts that we saw during COVID, they weren't an anomaly. They just highlighted what already exists, like the disproportionality of healthcare.
Yeah.
A lot of other Democrats like to think that universal access to health insurance is healthcare. I disagree. I think we need to provide high quality healthcare for everyone in this country for free, like most other developed countries have
Yeah.
done.
Do.
Many countries, in Europe, South America, Africa, Asia. It's just the standard, and it's something that we really need to do. Additionally, I'm very much in favor of the PRO Act. I think we need to end right to work across the country, and I
Hmm.
think a lot of the provisions of the PRO Act are really, against wage theft and other things that still happen in places like California and Los Angeles. I think there
Hmm.
is a lot in that bill that can help workers who are union and non union, and that will help the workers in the 37th district. As I said before, I think a huge priority is housing. And we
Yeah.
need more housing in the 37th district, but we need more affordable housing, and we need clean and sanitary housing. One of my pushes for the last few months, last few years, I guess, on and off, I've been, working with downtown Crenshaw, attending their meetings, and I do believe, the community land trust, the Liberty Community Land Trust that they're pushing, along with other land trusts like the Beverly, Vermont one, are something that we need to push nationally, because oftentimes when affordable housing is built, it has a limited covenant, and
Hmm.
30 years might seem like a lot, you know, initially, but it'll go by in a flash, and then those will be market rate again, and more housing that is actually affordable will be taken off the market. I believe that the federal government should invest in community land trust, and should invest in permanent affordability, so that we will have affordable housing for generations to come. But those are really the primary issues. There are also issues in the 37th district around policing. And I do think that there are things that the federal government should work towards mandating, in terms of not just community policing, which is an overused phrase, but really trying to focus on care rather than punishment, and giving the people in South LA in particular the same opportunities and the same benefit of the doubt as people who live in Culver City and Cheviot Hills get. A lot of people encounter officers in the same demeanor, but if they're young and black and brown, it's assumed that they are doing something wrong, rather than just questioning them like humans. So I think there are other ways that we need to change our entire public safety infrastructure, but also have much stronger consequences. Of course, ending qualified immunity is the first step, but we need more preventive measures to make sure these interactions just don't happen at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're mentioning so many issues that are interconnected, and I would like to talk to you a little bit more about how affordable housing and homelessness. In Los Angeles is rated the number one issue in people's minds and hearts. In the pandemic, it was disheartening to see so many people living on the streets as we have a pandemic, like global pandemic. We couldn't house folks. We couldn't provide them health care, support. And this is an issue that oftentimes people associate with crime, and but I think people fail to see that it's also part of poverty, and it's also part of a series of poor decisions made by our policymakers. Yesterday I was looking on Twitter that there's at the state level they're trying to pass a law to pay for the tickets that unhoused folks get. And this is what I was thinking. I'm like, how funny that this is how the money for homelessness goes around. We first ask people, you can't sleep in your car, it's a crime. So if you sleep in your car, you're going to get cited. Then at least in Los Angeles, then we don't allow them to sleep on the streets. We are criminalizing poverty too. And they also get cited if they get found sleeping on benches or in the parks, and they get cited. But how interesting that now the government is trying to pay their tickets that the government is giving them.
Yeah.
So another broken way to deal with homelessness. What do you
Well,
think we can do? And I know that this is not, you're not going to be able to resolve it alone. Like, this is another thing that I see a lot of people running for office right now claiming that they're going to solve homelessness. I want to be clear. This is a systemic issue, friends. Systemic. It's a big problem. We can all solve it together, but I don't think one person can. So what are your thoughts on homelessness?
well, first on the ticket payoff that is being pushed on the state, I think it's just emblematic of what Democrats do. Like they know something's a problem, they talk about it like it's a huge, huge problem, and it's something that we all need to be steadfast in working on. And then the solutions that they offer are, I mean, incremental would be a compliment. Like the
Mhm.
solutions that they offer are almost nothing, and they trumpet them like they're the best thing in the world. And the real thing that we need to do long term, I mean, everybody knows we need more affordable housing,
Mhm.
but we also need one of the reasons that I push for single payer healthcare and Medicare for all is single payer healthcare means universal mental health care as well.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people like to talk about, some unhoused person that they met that they thought was mentally unstable. And then they like to paint the brush that everyone else who is homeless is mentally unstable.
Mhm.
But the fact of the matter is, if, you lost your home and you were kicked out onto the street and you are socially isolated like a number of unhoused folks are, things might change with your mental health. And there's
It's
nothing wrong with it.
problematic.
There's nothing shameful about that. On the flip side, there are a number of people, particularly in communities of color, who did not have access to mental health as they were growing up. And if you don't really try to treat things early, and get somebody seeing a therapist on a regular basis, when things start to manifest, when kids are 12, 13, 14, 18, then things get worse and worse. So if we put more early focus on mental health itself, then I think we can prevent a lot of people from becoming homeless. Additionally, though, there are other things that I think would help.
Mhm.
I've spoken to some of the folks that are in the encampment in Culver City on the 405 in Venice, and a lot of them are like, "Yeah, I would take housing if someone found some housing for me, but I get general assistance, and it's $1,000 a month, and I gotta eat, you know, travel, and be
Gas. Oh
housed
God, yeah.
on like $1,000 a month." And it's like, no, that's not possible. This is Los Angeles. So one of the other things that I talk about a bit is the universal basic income, but I've been talking more with some folks more about universal basic services, and services more than income to just make the services themselves immune to inflation.
Mhm.
So instead of being provided such and such money each month, you're provided with housing, you're provided with healthcare, you're provided with food, and if the price of all of those things go up, you're still provided with housing, healthcare, food, and that's a huge step. In order for something like that to work, though, frankly, like I said, we need to build more affordable housing. We need to have places where people can actually stay, and or we need to talk seriously about a vacancy tax, um, because there are units and houses that are just waiting for other people to move to Los Angeles, or you know somebody from some other area to move to this area and buy things up. There's been a good amount of luxury housing built in the last 2 decades in Los Angeles County, mostly downtown and mostly in Hollywood. And it hasn't helped solve the crisis. A lot of my colleagues even talk openly about how all we need to do is build more housing. The type of housing doesn't matter. That's going to help. And I like to push back. I'm like, no, we need to build more affordable housing. And for me, people don't like it when I say this, but I'm Like, well, if you understand the difference between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, and you still want to do All Lives Matter when it comes to housing, you don't really understand it. It's like the people who are poor are the people who need the housing. The people who are on the street are the people who need the housing. The people who are affluent and just can't find the right house to buy, that's not my top priority.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that analogy because there are so many allies to that we the issues that we care about until they have to really throw down for it, and then they certainly don't want them in my backyard, for example. Or liberals are really great at this. They have all the signs, climate change, is real, believe the science, and Black Lives Matter, but then they want more policing people of color.
Yeah.
So it's or recently we saw the budget in Los Angeles, and it's kind of alarming that we still haven't got what the real purpose of defund the police is, which is it's not we don't want police, or it's not that we don't need them, or that we don't have other ways to bring order in to our communities, but we also want investments on education, investments on culture, and small businesses that were so affected in the pandemic.
Well,
you
yeah,
know
and I was gonna say, I know it's a cliche now, but it is true. Like the safest communities aren't the communities with the most police; they're the communities with the most resources.
Yes, absolutely. That is such a great tagline. And we need more. We need people to make more money. If you are making, like, people in your district making 30,000, 35,000, I mean, that's unbelievable to me. Or in my district, $45,000, a year, some folks. And you see the high prices of gas. We also live in a city where you cannot almost afford not to have a car. You kind of have to have something, a bicycle, a motorcycle, I mean, like something, that to transport yourself. Housing is super expensive. Gas is super expensive, and then God forbid you break a leg, or you have a health issue where you land in the hospital for too long, or you don't have a good health insurance, and to speak about again about single payer and Medicare for all. So you know imagine, this is why people accumulate debt, then they end up sleeping in friends house and couches, and then end up sleeping in their car, and then eventually pitching a tent, and then is going through the trauma of, like, not having a home. So I know that this is an issue very familiar to you, because you also had a health condition that also has been devastating, and that that for other folks is also has been devastated, and this is the reason why you're very invested in Medicare for all.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I also say a lot is, like, we know single payer works because we know um, that elected officials have single payer healthcare right now. They have the best healthcare in the world, and I just, my rallying cry around that is, we want what you got because you
Mhm.
have quality healthcare. My personal medical journey. Oh, sorry.
Instagrammers, bear with us.
But my personal medical journey really really sort of hit a level of contrast when I joined the council. Because prior to joining the council with insurance, my yearly medical bills would get into the tens of thousands easily every year. Because I was going from this specialist, this neurologist, this rheumatologist, this ENT. Uh, I think I had at least three neurologists then at the time, one at UCLA, one at USC, one at Cedar Sinai. And it was all just so expensive. There were a whole lot of things in my life that had to stop because I was paying for my healthcare. Shortly after I was elected, um, I started taking advantage of the healthcare that was provided, and I went to the doctor sort of at the same rate that I did when I first got sick, and literally, like, my bill, including like copays and everything else at the end of the year. was maybe $500 or $700, and this
Wow.
is seeing doctors at least 30 times, like
Wow.
in the year, and having at least a few special procedures. So it's really possible. Um, it's possible for us to have quality care. It's possible for us to have a single payer system because that's what elected officials have right now.
Got it. Got it. So somebody's asking on the chat if you can define what affordable housing is to you, because I actually like this question because there's so many affordable housing, talk out there, and when then it's really not affordable for the people in the area. So if you can maybe define for Sines woman, she's asking.
So the type of affordable housing that I would prioritize building is affordable housing that is affordable for people who are in the lowest tax bracket. It would
Mhm,
be extremely low affordable housing if we're using the definitions that LA County and the state of California use.
mhm,
Extremely low affordable housing. I'm not talking about naturally affordable housing that, was built 70 years ago, and then newer housing was built 50 years ago, newer housing was built 30 years ago. Not the naturally occurring type, the type that is built with the purpose of housing the people who have the least.
mhm. Amazing. Thank you for that. And then, let me see if I can get this right. Mendiolive, Mendiolive High. He is also saying that we should also have a community effort when it comes to homelessness. That we should include small businesses, families, neighborhoods, and I really love that idea, Mendiolive, to have like a community approach,
Yeah.
about it. Well, okay, so I also like to invite candidates so that my community can also learn what's like for folks, everyday folks, to run for office. And in your experience, what has been the most challenging aspect of running for office?
I mean, one of the most challenging aspects for regular people is just always fundraising.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to. I think for a lot of people who grew up working class, asking people for money is not fun. It's something that I used to avoid, even if I really needed it. Even borrowing money from my mom, I would wait until the last possible minute and then be like, "So, mom, hey," but you know, once you start asking people, and once you have some successes, it becomes much easier. It's just finding the time to do it once you get really deep into the campaign. For me now, that is the issue. I am mayor. That comes with a bit more responsibility than being a council member here in Culver City. I'm still working my job at the James
Hmm.
Lawson Institute. We're trying to plan events at Vanderbilt University in Nashville for September, working with the University of South Florida, and then I'm also working for Hindu University of America, and I'm on the board of directors for about three, four, five nonprofits that where I'm also continuing work. So, schedule wise, just finding the time to call people to ask for money has been a little bit of a challenge, and it's you got to be in the right mindset to just make call after call after call. And sometimes if your schedule's too busy, when you pick up the phone, you're not your normal dynamic self. But that's a huge challenge to start. But then another challenge is if you are working class and you don't come from the political class, getting people to notice you and actually cover your
Yeah.
stories. Um, I have some friends who work in national media, and almost every campaign where things might not have been covered that should have, I usually just reach out to them and ask them to have me on their podcast, to have me on,
Hmm.
do a little write up for me or this or that. And then I send that to the local media that's not covering me. And then they start covering me. This week, we didn't get the LA Times endorsement, but in their endorsement of our challenger, they said a lot of positive things about us.
Yeah.
I think we're at the point now where people do at least know who we are. So those challenges aren't as big as they used to be, but they were fairly extreme when I first started running. It was very difficult for me to get people to cover me at all.
Totally. And this is like for grassroots candidates and for low income folks, that everyday folks that want to run for office. Also, because our circle, the school that you go to, the college that you went to, like, the people around you. If if you don't have a lot of resources and then they also don't, I mean, it's like it's really difficult to ask, someone. And there's so many wonderful people running for office that should be elected, that can get elected because of the money, the funding barrier, and the fact that a lot of people run and this is like their career. They run, so they already have a network of folks.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like labor plays a huge role on this too. The unions, labor, they, sometimes they're not as progressive as we wish they were, and they bet usually on more of the incumbent established candidates, which is sad.
Yeah, I mean, labor goes back and forth. There are definitely more progressive unions, and sometimes the membership of the union is more progressive than the leadership of the unions. Just had a conversation, an interview with ILWU in San Pedro on Tuesday morning. Um, they're, historically known as one of the more progressive unions. Also, the painters union is more
Yeah.
progressive. Um,
The nurses.
yeah, yeah, but I feel like I wish sometimes unions would actually use some of the power that they have to really set the stage and say, no, if you're not pro this policy, we are not endorsing you.
Hmm.
We're gonna find another candidate, because I think too often they go with somebody that they know, and the person that they know, gives them very small victories,
I
and
know.
or has them have to expend way too much of their time convincing them to do what is obvious,
Hmm.
rather than putting your money and your power behind a candidate that 100% agrees with you, that you don't have to convince, that is here to advocate for working people. It can be frustrating, but I think some union leaders realize that the way that things are now isn't exactly working out for their members, and I think they're open to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give a big shout out to Teamsters Local 399, who is in the house in Hollywood. I see them also, reflecting on our conversation. So thank you for being here and thank you for your work. All right. But, there is also something very rewarding about running for office is, there's so many good stories, especially when you're connecting with folks. What are some of the like the best part for you about running for office? What's your like sweet spot?
I think the best part is just really unexpected conversations.
Yeah.
When you're walking door to door, or when you're like, I mean, there are a number of times where I have been walking door to door and I ran into a friend and I was like, "Oh, you live here?" I thought, "Oh yeah, no, I moved."
Yeah.
I mean, those are always good to have, but then there are times when, you know, you're walking door to door to tell people who you are, and people open the door and they're like, "Oh, Daniel Lee, hey, come in, let's talk." And I'm just like, "Oh, okay." I'm gonna try to not think of that as creepy and just continue our conversation. But sometimes you open the door and people are like, "Oh, great, hey, can you come back and talk to 10 of my friends?" And I'm like, definitely. That's sort of what
Yeah.
this whole thing is about. And it's really encouraging for people who a lot of times have been looking for someone to vote for,
Yeah.
frankly. Like, a lot of people are disillusioned with the process. And every now and then, they'll meet a candidate. Sometimes that candidate is you, that actually gives them more hope. They're like, "You understand, I don't have to convince you of the incredibly basic things that we need to do, like address climate change, like build more housing, like raise the minimum wage, like end fossil fuel subsidies,
Hmm.
like codifying a woman's right to choose." Like, there are people who just get really excited when they meet someone who says the obvious things that we should have been doing, 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. So those instances are great. It's also sometimes interesting to be, uh, at least when we're in person at forums where there are other candidates in the Los Angeles area around. Definitely gotten to know a pretty good network of progressive candidates this year. There seem to be a whole lot more than there have been in the last few cycles. I'm sure some of us will be eliminated on June 7th, but some will make it through. And I think November will be very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, so if folks are interested in supporting your candidacy, your campaign, what are some of the things that you need? How can they get in touch? If you are on Facebook and on Twitter and on Twitch, you can see. I'm gonna also post it on the chat here, your website. But how can folks get in touch with you?
Sure. So you can email team@danielwaynlee.com if you want to get in touch. We also have a campaign phone number on our website. That's danielwaynlee.com. Of course, you can send us a message on Twitter or Instagram or YouTube or Facebook, and we'll get back to you quickly. Right now, if you are able, join us walking door to door. I'm walking with the mayoral candidate Gina Viola tomorrow morning
Yes.
in the Fairfax district, and been walking in the past with Constantine Anthony from Burbank, various other folks that are running. But if you can't walk with us, we're also phone banking. You can go to dannywaynlee.com/volunteer to sign up to volunteer. In addition to that, if you can't walk and you can't make phone calls, you can donate. You
Yeah.
can go to dannywaynlee.com/donate. Spend as much as you can, but every little bit helps. And of course, if you live in the 37th district or you have friends who do, tell them about us. Share this video and tell them to vote for us by June 7th.
There you go. Well, they can vote now because, everybody's getting their ballots. So that's exciting. Well, I want to thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for your work and your vision. And, I feel like we need more social workers in office. And,
I
people
agree.
that
I agree.
are people that have a approach that is more global, instead of just trying to fix, little things with, big problems with little, small solutions. But we need to look at the system, and also how all these issues are intersectional. So thank you so much. We will be seeing you very soon again, hopefully with excellent, great news. And yeah, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay, everyone. So that was Daniel Lee. And as you know, I pinned in the comments here, his information. And please, 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 support him, support his candidacy. It takes a village. So all of you are welcome to dip your toes and your whole body in the water and get involved. Until the next one, I'll see next week. I think we're headed to a holiday. So I don't know if I'm going to be interviewing anyone, but you guys will see me out here. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. The conversation always continues online, so you can continue with the comments. I'll post these videos on my social media channels. And don't forget, just stay encouraged and stay involved. Thank you guys. Bye.